Hello, everyone. How you doing today? My name is Andy Betts, and as you may have heard already, I'm part of the KDE ecosystem. I work particularly on Plasma, the desktop, right? And I have been at it for about 20 plus years. And it's a very rewarding place to be in. It's my volunteer life, and as a regular person in the world, I have a job where I work as a QA manager for some of our web applications that we sell. Today, I wanted to talk to you about design systems, but I'm going to start my talk by talking about the solution, and then I'll explain how I got there. Okay? So with design systems, I'm sure a few of you are aware, you work in a space that is a crossover between graphics and code. And they organize a lot of your creative work so that production systems like in software can take that and build something very accurate and high fidelity to what you designed. This actually requires a lot of work on your side as a designer to organize all of these things and to be very thoughtful, methodical about your approach to design. So design systems help us organize more than anything, help us bring down all the, the pretty flowers we can make on any app, and we turn it into actual, executable code that others can use. So design systems also have a side property that they can very easily be shared with other people. And other people can contribute to your graphics in a very clear way. This has been kind of a revelation, at least for us at Plasma, because for many years, we've not had anything that is collaborative when it comes to graphics. We generally have people who submit designs, scattered designs here and there, and they, with their own tools, this is my suggestion, and they give it to you. And unfortunately, for a development-oriented workflow, that doesn't help very much because it doesn't say much about how it's built. It just shows you output. So these are some of the elements that we are interested in at Plasma because of the way that they solve the problem that I'm going to tell you about next. So we have a few things that are not great, and we have to be very honest about this discussion. And as much as I love Plasma, I would never think that it's perfect, right? And that it's completed and done. There's no more to do there. So one of the things that I think about of why it is that open source generally doesn't have some of these elements considered is because of a loss of designers in some spaces. Actually, that certainly happened in Plasma. We've lost designers over time. I mean, the people who worked on KDE 4 are not here. And that's the end of the story, at least the design side. And like I said before, sometimes we have some scattered concepts that are just, it's hard to put a pin on stuff that is so random sometimes. And another thing that happens to us is that the loss of designers gives developers a majority. And I don't mean to turn my comments into a discussion of us versus them, right? I'm just explaining the facts. The facts are that today, very likely we have over 90% of our contributing audience is developer-oriented. That's just the truth. And because of that, it precludes the ways that designers can work with them, especially an example that I see often, at least for me, is when sometimes I don't present enough data, or I just make an offhand kind of comment about a design that's been proposed. Very quickly, there's like 10 other people who think alike, and they say, we should go this other route, not what you said, right? And so those dynamics happen, and they're hard to conquer sometimes. And another interesting thing, even though I know KDE is doing really well today, but our developer audience, our groups, are not that big in comparison to other places. We have core developers who work on, they do paid work to focus on specific issues. Some hardware vendors also are interested in working with us. As you may know, for example, Valve includes our system in their Steam Deck, and that also comes with a lot of requests to work on specific areas. But even then, our team is small. And and that's why I was saying here, when you have a small team, you have small delivery. So these are just numbers. At the end of the day, if we had, for example, more designers with us, that balance could shift. Other things could, work out in a much easier way, and we can resolve a lot of problems even for developers. And finally, I think this is a big one. We misunderstand each other all the time, and we speak in different languages, right? Designers generally work on, people's perceptions and habits and interactions based on research, based on, and again, not a perfect science either, but it definitely gives you some answers. And then developers are more on the side of, clear code, clear execution, code testing, who knows, efficiencies that you can gain in a system. Those are very, very important things, but they're very different. And so in our design system, that's been a recurrent issue, basically explaining what a design system does versus what a developer thinks it does. And that kind of bears more responsibility on me as a communicator, but that's where we are. So with that in mind, we talk about the gap a little bit, and we need to cross all this. The gaps you may already know. Open source projects are small. They're largely driven by individuals, single individuals, rather than enormous groups. Only after a long period of development, you sort of gather, I don't know, rapport or reputation, and your software sort of lives a little, kind of a better life with more people interested in it. Also, as you may know as well, design in open source, and let's just say Linux, as an acronym there, is not our forte, right? Like, we name the apps that can do all the things that the Adobe Suite does in Linux. Like, there may be some that come close, but not exactly there. It's not a strength. And not only that, even in that space, we also don't have a lot of comparatively better or equal applications. For example, the unicorn Figma, hard to catch now. They got $1 billion recently out of a deal, and they're moving really fast. And what that means is, more and more dependence on paid products that may not necessarily play with you as a free user. And so, huge valley to climb. It's a hard thing. Now, what this, in the end, develops in our groups is that our development slows down. We just cannot deliver the features our users want or blog about, talk about online. We don't have the applications that we need. And so at the end of the day, design in open source suffers a lot. We just don't have the tools and the means, and it's really difficult to convince a large audience to change their side to what you're proposing. So yay us for choosing probably the most challenging aspect of doing design. So taking all of this into account, I was thinking about what are some of the ways that we can get a ladder across the gap. How can we at least see a glimmer of light. And unfortunately, a few things need to align. So a few stars need to align before we do this. But I would say the main thing is that even if you had pen and paper today, you can still have a vision about what you want to do. And if you want to convince others to help you, you gotta start with a vision. You gotta establish your objectives, what it is that you're solving, what is the benefit to everyone, how does this simplify or make your software stronger, how do you envision the future state of your current development process. You have to think of that, because unfortunately, in the world of humans, we have to promote stuff before we cause change. So the same is true for our teams. There is no one in open source, probably open source more than any other kind of group, where if you just toss an idea out to the wind, somebody will work on it. You have to work hard to change minds, bring people on your side, and work with you and understand and share the vision that you're setting up. Then another thing that is important is invite new people in. At least for us, that's been our strategy. As we work with tools that are more utilized across the board or more understood by newer designers, it's much easier to have a conversation with others about coming to the fold, because now we use the tools you use, so we can have a better conversation. So that's a big thing. And we want to work also on a project that everyone can relate to. So I'll explain this a little bit more later, but in KDE, working with a design system solves a lot of issues for us. And I'm sure that's the story of a lot of other companies and groups as well. But for us, it charts the course of where we want to go. And that's a huge shift from just taking in regular merge requests, I guess, in our case, and just accepting them or rejecting them. It has more of a vision. So that's the end goal. And I would say that at the end of the day, what matters most is not so much how many pixels you can push out, it's how you build a platform where anyone can do the same as you. So recently, I had a discussion with some of my peers in Plasma about this project and about some of the ins and outs of why we need this. And I was asked, okay, well, how are you going to make this so that you're going to be the only person working on this thing? How come? Blah blah blah. It's sort of centered around the individuality of running this project. And so my answer to that was, I'm not building pixels. I'm building a platform. And this platform can work without me. I don't have to be responsible for this. It can live on its own and can actually more closely democratize some of the designs that we have. And so I'm irrelevant. All I'm doing is I'm just bringing the bricks so we can build a house. And I think that that's more important. I think a lot of times we sort of, as designers, we speak with pictures. We lead with pictures, and we think about organization next. And developers do the same, right? Like they lead with code, and then let's talk about design later, right? We want to come to a field where we are equal, and we can speak our language easier for everybody. So design systems allow for that open commenting features that they have, for proposing new changes into your design system and moving forward with that. So that's a big plus. Now, where did we start? Well, like I said before, we worked with Figma. We tried a few other alternatives, but we landed finally on PenPot. Well, it's open source, and it does most of the things that Figma does, and then it's open source. So did I say that before? So it helps quite a lot. In fact, in our system, we started in Figma, building some of these things, and very quickly, it became kind of impossible to share, right? You can't do it. You have to bring people into the Figma team, and then you have to pay for every seat. And developer mode is not available to you unless you pay. And so, for developers, I mean, for the business model, good catch, right? Like you know how to make money. But for us in the open source world, that's killer because now I can't not even show to a developer how this thing is built. So PenPot came along, and this is one of those stars aligning that I explained about before. They came along and they said, well, let's try to mimic and improve on some of the things that they're doing. And one really cool thing that PenPot is doing is that they're leaning heavily into design tokens, which is something that not even Figma does enough of. And so they do it through, well, most recently they started integrating, but they've done it historically just as add-ons, plugins that you can use that kind of collect this stuff. And I hope you all know about PenPot. And the one thing that you should know also is that it's kind of slow right now. It's not moving very fast in the sense of the UI, but they are working on a new rendering engine. And we were beta testing it, and we provided our feedback, and we met with them during FOSS Dem, actually, to talk about some of the things that we need. And we also talked about, for example, how to democratize even more about sharing libraries across, random users across the internet and contributing back. So it's great for community-driven projects. It brings transparency to the process, and so we landed on PenPot. Now, we haven't moved everything out of Figma. We still have our icons in Figma because PenPot does not support all the line work that we do. Not that our icons are kind of complex, but they definitely need a little bit more support to be right. So what is our strategy here? How do we want to work this? We want to basically begin by doing the work. So in some of the sessions before, I was talking to some of you about how to just go forward. And that's the approach that I took. I saw the benefits of design systems, and I formed a small team of interested people in the Plasma team that could do design like in Figma, so that they could help me build some of these assets, and we had long discussions about color theory, about how do we do our palettes, how do we do our typography, and just really, and again, it was a small team, so it was maybe like no more than 10 people, and we were just talking about how this thing can work. Again, I was probably the least knowledgeable at the time about it, so they helped me a lot to understand some of the things that I needed to do. And then we executed all of the foundational elements of the design system. We put them there. After that, I started talking to more and more people about in Plasma about the design system. We went to Academy. I've given now 2 or 3 talks about the design system in Plasma that relate the advances that we've made. And also, I started a YouTube channel to just explain how the development is going. And it seemed to be very favorable for people to see it that way. I am a terrible writer. I do not like picking up like a laptop to type. But so I was like, if I can just say all these things and then be recorded, and that's your info. So that's simple for me. And so we started with that effort, and then it led, obviously, you know how atomic design works, right? Like you start with your foundations, and then you get to the atom, and then you get to the molecule, and then you get to the, is it organism? Yeah, there you go. Okay, good. So consider the foundations as more like the atoms, and then the molecules is more like the next layer of items. So buttons, scroll bars, drop downs, toolbars, and we could name 1,000, right? So that was next. And once we started building that, I started working on building concepts for Plasma, early concepts. Not that this is a redesign. I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen, but I'm just trying to understand how I would process UI through the lens of this new system. So, and then do some more communication. Always communicate, always share, always invite others to come to the project and help out. Do not be afraid of just bringing in anybody. I think a lot of times, I mean, of course, not everybody's opinions are as informed or as high level or low level, whatever you want to do. But there is value in bringing people who believe the same vision as you, no matter what skill level they have, because as you may know, in any open source project, you have not more, I mean, you don't have mono functions, right? You have many functions, and people can go into different areas depending on what they're interested in. But at the core, it matters that they care for what you're doing. So we are interested in working with distributed design. We're interested in moving forward with ways to bring the discussion back to graphics. There are people who are very interested in working with us, but they historically have not had the tools or the means to communicate with us through it. So I think this idea brings a solution to that. So I wanted to focus also on a couple of things at the bottom here. So not only are we just building pixels, but we're also solving a lot of issues. I don't know if you've heard, but like right now in Plasma, we are working on a new styling engine called Union. Historically, Plasma has had multiple frameworks to work with, and to a small team, that means that the developer has to make sure that whatever UI they're building has to look the same between all of our different frameworks. So if you count it right, that's 4 times the amount of work. So they have to code the same thing to look the same with the limitations and affordances that each of those frameworks systems provide you and make it look the same. That's really difficult. And that's one of the reasons why our developers sometimes struggle to accept redesigns, at least in Plasma, is because for them it means 4x the amount of work. So with design systems and with the Union engine, you actually remove that complexity. The Union engine will actually create just a unified styling system for all those frameworks, so developers only code once, and then the system gives them the right component that they need. Well, that's one side. And then with the design system, we're actually plugging in our design tokens, and then the Union engine will just build whatever component we're trying to tell it to build. So if you are connecting the dots on this, it means that development will be much faster and much easier, because now you're removing the developers from the design. Today, our developers have to do a lot of design, so they literally are choosing colors in a UI. And then you give that, you offload that from the developers, you give it to the designers that have a correlated system that brings you back. Not only that, with the Union engine, developers will now just code once, which is great. So to me, that's a huge, huge change. And it will allow us to be a small team, but deliver big. And that's my vision. Now, how do we do this? We start, like I said, we started in Figma. We're now moving to PenPot. I would say 99% of our assets are in PenPot, except our icons. And some of the remaining questions that we have are around the shareability of our assets. Right now, even though PenPot is open source and all, their model to share libraries out is by making an export, and then somebody else opens that export in their version of PenPot, and they try to work with our system. But those systems have no connection between each other. And so another thing is that because of the lack of connection, sometimes users that make an awesome change or fix in our design system cannot give it back to us unless they tell us directly. And so we were talking to PenPot about how can we fix this, because if we're truly a distributed team, we also want to integrate some of the Git or GitLab or ideas around code contribution. So it needs to kind of come back to us. We bounced around a few ideas, so hopefully in the future they have something solid, but that's one area that we're looking for further. But today, anybody can download our library, can work off a bit offline on that, but still they can have our assets, they can see what we're doing, and they can talk back to us and tell us what's going on. Now, in our current state, we have, like I said, all of our foundational elements. We have all of our molecule style or level of asset building. And so we're looking good. Actually, I haven't touched the design system in a while because I'm just waiting for the union engine to be real code. It's supposed to happen in 2 to 3 months or so. So here, fingers crossed. But so far, actually, they gave us a button. So they built a button if they could with their concepts that design token concepts that we provided to them. And they built a button, and they said it was easier. So I'll take that feedback. Now, what have we learned from this? That we need to be, like I said before, we need to be organized. We need to think methodically. We need to build platforms rather than pixels. And in that, I say pixels are the product of your platform rather than the reason for it. So I just want to make sure that I can just instill that on you. I think sometimes, we have the discussion between designers and developers, and we sort of have a little valley between us. But the one thing that I really value about developers is that when you tell them to change something, they say, okay, how do I turn this into a platform? How do I turn this into a self-sustaining system? How do I intervene this enough so that I never have to touch it again? And that is efficient thinking, right? When working with design system, we should think that way. We should think about the broader implications of a change here and change there. And every now and then I catch myself, thinking, oh, shoot, if I change this token, I know it's going to affect this button, this drop down, and this over here. So how do I make that, And so you start thinking in those terms as well. And I'm finding that over time, even though I'm doing more design than ever before, I'm closer to development than ever before. And I think that's a good thing. So to wrap it up, I just wanted to ask, if you're not a KDE designer yet, that you are. And then the other one is reach out. Our team is in need of designers. We are in need of UX people that can tell us, what is best for users. And I'm sure that in our current environment, we would welcome that help. Right now, we are challenged by growth. And that's a really tough challenge. And so I think the more we can support our teams, the better. You're welcome to join. You're welcome to participate. And if I can help you in anything, just let me know. But that's my talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Andy. We have time for some questions. Show of hands. Anyone have a question? I think you've answered everything.
Did I cover every topic?
Yeah, I think so. Wait, we have one thing here.
Yeah, I don't mind asking. And maybe this question is not just for you, but all the open source designers. I was just thinking while you were talking, the companies that work in for-profit, they're always innovating with design. Now we have this liquid, whatever shit that's going on with iOS and material. So, I see one open source team that's doing a lot of innovation with material design. Mm-hmm. But I'm just wondering, how do we open source designers innovate? When do we get the time to create new stuff, go out and put work that feeds? For example, there are code contributions are used by for-profit companies. How are designs that are created by open source designers get used in these systems? How do they inspire? I don't know. It's a complex question, but
it's more on the licensing side. But I I think one of the things that doesn't matter to Plasma is that how we open source our stuff and what happens after. We generally don't have a lot of hooks to bring something back to us. I think at the very least, if there is somebody that's using a name that is trademarked by us, then we talk to those people and try to steer them away from that. But as far as the code, I don't know how other projects do it, but I think in KDE we have something very interesting where we just sort of let it be and we make it stay alive, and we don't care too much for how others use it. But I think if there is an area of image and branding that matters to us, that maybe some of these external or third parties use of our code may not be in our best interest, we generally talk to them and figure out something. But I think in some ways we're still working on a trust system. Yeah.
Thank you. Good. Okay, here. Sorry.
Thank you. I'm not so familiar with Plasma, so maybe it's a naive question, but I'm just curious. You mentioned that you made a design system for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering, because I'm also starting to work with like design systems from scratch, what I haven't had to do in a long time. But are you making a design system first and then making a design with that? Or is it the other way? Do you make a design first and then make your design system to reflect that? Or is it a mix of both somehow?
So it's a multi-year answer, I would say, with that, because we've always had a vision of what we want Plasma to be. I don't know if you've heard of our motto, which is simple by default and powerful when needed. Did you know that Microsoft also stole that? But I'm not joking. But the philosophy of what we want has been there for a long time. We've just never delivered that. And why? Because of all these complexities that I talked about. So when I built the design system, I actually went back to our human design guidelines that we've had for a long time, to our vision, and I started thinking, okay, what are the things that we could actually do to meet this kind of demand, this kind of philosophy? And I don't know if you know, but right now in KDE we use the Breeze style, which is, it's been developed for a very long time. And a lot of people actually, when I started building this other design system, they said, well, why don't you just adapt Breeze to be that thing that you want to do? Just put Breeze through a design system. And I thought about it a lot, and it didn't make a ton of sense to me. Because one, Breeze, for all the good that it's, all the attention that it's received over the years, I don't see it as having fulfilled that vision that we have of the desktop. And another thing is that because Breeze is not built in a design system idea or concept, I would have had to invent a lot of things that Breeze doesn't have, thereby making more changes to Breeze, and it wouldn't be Breeze anymore. So what is my alternative? Do I work with the old and try to make it cool, or do I work with the new that is already cool, right? That's why I was hinting at some of the questions you had earlier, because of that idea. Is like, how do you know when to let go of the old and work on the new? And for me, these conditions of having PenPot, Union Engine, developer acceptance of this project told me that they are ready for something new. And so that's why I went that way.
I'm curious precisely about that last bit about developer buy-in, so to speak, right? Like I work on Ubuntu, and I'm more familiar perhaps with what GNOME does, and I'm very impressed not only by the default apps that ship with GNOME, but also about the ecosystem, right, and how consistent it is, and precisely the human interface guidelines. I know KDE has it as well. How do you plan to for instance, to explain the design system, right? I'm thinking about documentation side, a sort of a bit of advocacy, perhaps, with that ecosystem. How do you plan to get that feedback in?
Yeah, so we have done some of this work already. In the very beginning, when the design system was taking off and getting created, we had discussions as a small team that included a few key developers of Plasma. And they were more sitting on the back, right? And we were talking about some of the things that we could do. Of course, these are different skill sets, and so, but at least having their presence in early meetings was really important to me, even though they had a million questions, and I had a million questions about how Plasma could handle our new work. And there was a lot of friction there too. But I think at the end of the day, what kept us together is that everyone wants something that can benefit users way more than what we do today. And so we had discussions like that. We met online, and actually these meetings were all open. We could have invited anyone, but I posted mostly on our Matrix channels about who wanted to participate. And then through those meetings, I just flat out assigned things, and I said, you can do this, you can do that, I will do this, and they contributed a lot. Then beyond that, like I mentioned before, we had a meeting about, how do we make this project go bigger? And that's when I started doing the YouTube channel. I haven't posted in a couple months, but it's because there haven't been a ton of updates on the design system. But when there were, I was doing that very periodically. Blogging as well, but we also created a wiki for Ocean to just detail everything that I could think of that wasn't necessary. But Lucas was telling me that there are a couple more things that we should do, and I'm gonna do that. Then and another thing that's important for me is get in front of people. So I started getting talks at Academy to talk about this. You actually can still see it. If you go to the KDE channel and just put Academy 2025 and 2024, you'll see that I spoke on this. We also had a BOF, a Birds of a Feather session every time. And so I felt like that was a lot to get people on my side. I started showing a lot of mock-ups as well. Of course, you got to, give the candy. And so I wouldn't say that this has eliminated questions from people today. There is a core group of developers that understand what we're doing, but when the system starts becoming a reality, when the button is really in Plasma, I'm sure we're going to have a ton of questions. So the work is not done, but I think that having those early acceptances from people was very key.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Andy. I will also ask you to please give it up.
Thank you.